Hi everyone, welcome back to today's segment. Today I'd like to introduce you to a dear friend of mine whom I've had the pleasure of cooking with. She's had a very successful show on public television and teaches vegan cooking worldwide. Her story serves as a source of inspiration. And so it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce Christina. Welcome today. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks, Rakesh. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, when I'm not cooking, I've been saving lives, but hey, it's all good. It's
Just
all in
a
a day's
small
work.
job on the side besides
Exactly.
cooking.
But you know what? I really wanted to highlight you today because
you.
in my world, in cardiology, it's so important to get the diet right. And this is something you've been really passionate about. And this is what really connected us, and food connects everyone.
Yeah.
So why don't we impart the viewers with some ideas for being heart healthy, but maybe even introduce what got you down this road first?
Well, what got me in the mess I'm in is that at 26, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I was afraid of losing my hair. Don't.
Wow.
I was afraid of losing my hair, and I met the man that I married, and he introduced me to macrobiotics, which is a Chinese medicine-based philosophy of food that allows you to balance your pH and, with any luck, heal yourself. And in 14 months, I was cancer-free and still had my hair. That's a really short version of it. It was a trials and tribulations, 14 months, but that was 35 years ago.
That's a whole segment in and of itself.
It is. It's a whole,
incredible.
It's a book, but no, it's not yet.
Yeah.
But it's a book.
It's a series.
It's a series, right? On I don't know, the Twilight Zone. But coming out of that, I remember cooking in a natural food store as their, I won't say chef, but as their cook, because it was a small natural food store, and I was basically working the lunch counter and thinking, I don't know, I don't understand why I got better. You know, and people would ask me at the counter, why do you put this food with this food to make this dish balance? And I would think, I don't know. So I went and studied Chinese medicine, acupuncture, Ayurveda, got my master's in nutrition because I needed to know what was happening, why food had the impact on wellness that it does, because I'm not the only person in the universe to have cured their illness through food. And from that, I discovered through Chinese medicine that our conditions are far more complicated than the physical aspect that might be, you know, coming to the front that makes us have to deal with it. And so cardiology and heart disease is the most amazing example of how Chinese medicine shows us what's happening with the body. In Chinese medicine, the heart and small intestine are governed by the emotion of joy, passion, and when in balance, you're a happy, passionate, very wonderful person. When you're out of balance with excess energy, you're like the drunk at the party with the lampshade on your head all the time. And eventually, with that kind of overstimulation, your heart attacks you.
Sure.
I mean, that's why we call it what we call it. And in our culture, we assume heart attacks are just the law of the land. Yeah. We get them. Too bad. Leading killer of men and women since 1973.
Absolutely.
So it is what it is. And so when it comes to people changing your heart, we always say, you know, that's the heart of him. We're asking them to change who they are.
Right. So I always say, I fix broken hearts for a living.
Exactly.
But it's not just the physical.
It's
and
everything.
What we're really talking about is the whole body. And it starts up here.
That's
it's
right.
a mindset.
That's right. And it's very hard I've discovered it's very hard for a heart patient to change their food because it's who they are. It's sentimental, heart. It's I'm rejecting the way my wife, mother, partner cooks, heart. Yeah. And so I don't have support. And support to a heart patient is essential. They can't be out there alone cooking kale while the family's eating French fries.
Right.
It's not going to happen. Isolation is terrible for a heart patient. It's a team sport.
It's a team sport.
More than any other disease I've discovered. As much as cancer, yes, you want support. You can manage. For some reason, the heart, because it's the heart, you can't do it because it's fed by all the body's systems. You need a system around you.
Sure. No, you're absolutely spot on. So at some point, you made the conscious effort to switch your diet around through, unfortunately, tragic events, which happens to so many people.
Yes.
But you were able to empower yourself to do so.
Yeah, I did have help.
You found the willpower.
I mean, I had my husband, who is now my husband, as like a cheerleading squad. Yeah. But I'm very independent and very, in Italian, we say testadora, hard head. So when he first offered to help me learn how to cook, I was a chef. I mean, I was a pastry chef, but I was also a chef.
Sure.
I know how to cook. And so Robert's handing me things like rutabagas and turnips and quinoa and brown rice. And I'm looking at it thinking, we feed this to horses. How am I supposed to cook this and make it taste like food? And he came to my apartment, opened my pantry and said, yeah, all this has to go. And it was all things, you know, sugar, there was sugar. And then there was sugar.
There's more sugar.
And then there was processed food.
Yep.
And, you know, I ate a single woman's vegetarian diet, right?
Yeah.
Pizza, whatever. So I kind of had to learn how to cook all over again.
So wait a minute. You mean to tell me
Yes.
preservatives in foods don't preserve life?
No, I wish they did. Because we'd be all set. Our job would be way easier. And so the switch for me, the hardest thing was sugar.
Yeah.
And in Chinese medicine, sugar is one of the main inflammers of the heart.
Sure.
And for me, I've never done heroin, but I went through withdrawal the likes of I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Wow.
Because I went cold turkey. Sugar 9 times a day, no sugar. And so I spent about a month walking through the streets of Philadelphia, and if I saw somebody eating something sweet, I swear I wanted to smack them. I mean, I didn't, but I was so like, so enraged or so scattered from I can't eat sugar. It was hard to focus on everything else. And then 2 months into my recovery, I went to the doctor, and I really, when I tell you I've been sort of half-assed cooking, I'd make rice, but whatever. And then I just wouldn't eat. Mostly I didn't eat. So my first foray into remission was from what I stopped doing.
Wow.
And I found that sometimes when you try to get people to change and help them, that's the starting point.
Right.
Take one ingredient a week out of your pantry that you know is not healthy, and we all know what they are, and put a healthier option in its place. And in 6 months, all your baby steps have taken you to a new way of eating.
And that was exactly where I was going to go. How do you do this? It's not something that you can just flip on, flip off. It's not that easy.
No.
And for
And
most
it's far
people,
into us.
Yes, exactly. And if you try to do the on-off thing, there's a high probability that you'll rebound. It's sort of like a fad diet.
That's right.
You lose 30 pounds in 2 months, guess what? 40 pounds are coming back. Right?
Because you've deprived yourself and not changed the
Exactly.
switch in your head.
Exactly. So for our viewers, your tips on transitioning. I mean, I think that's really what we need to call it. It's a transition and it's a deliberate transition. But I think you have to set goals.
Yeah.
In 6 months, I will have fully transitioned.
Right.
Or in 6 months, I will have partially transitioned. And within 1 year, I'll make a complete transition.
Right.
What was that period like for you? How long did it take you? Because there was a lot of
About a
education
month.
along the way, too.
About a month.
Okay.
About a month before I felt like I could really cook this food and make it taste like something other than cardboard.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Because I was so sugared up
Yeah.
that I don't think my taste buds tasted anything except sugar and chocolate and coffee. And it took a long time for me to realize that a parsnip was actually sweet. But it takes about a month for your taste buds, month and a half, for your taste buds to come back from a life of the Golden Arches
Absolutely.
to a life of nature. But what's interesting is the first thing I tell people is to look at this as an adventure, a culinary adventure. Stop thinking about what you're no longer eating.
Right.
And look at what you now will be trying. And there'll be stuff you don't like.
Sure.
I still don't like turnips, but I eat them now and then, right? So I tell people to start with the things that they know they can change right now.
Yeah.
If you're always eating white pasta, try buying vegetable or whole wheat pasta or multigrain pasta. Yes, it's different. It's different. This is a small change.
But you'll
put
get
on your
used to
big
it.
boy pants
Exactly.
and do it.
Right.
Right? At some point, we also have to do that.
Right.
I also tell people if you live on white rice, try quinoa. It cooks in 17 minutes. You kind of have no excuses. It's the same complex and complete protein as an egg. It's satisfying. It's delicious.
Exactly.
You cook it in the same way and put the rest of your dinner together. The main thing is that they add more vegetables. I don't care how. A stir fry, a salad. Only 19% of Americans eat vegetables more than once a day.
Right.
And of them, 50% eat them as fried potatoes. We have a long way to go in the vegetable department. I always wonder when I'm in a supermarket that has a produce department like Disneyland, who's buying it?
Right.
Who's eating this? Certainly not us. I mean, us, yes, but so I think people have to start their incremental changes with, if you always eat salad, make a kale salad. Try something new. Buy a vegetable, go on the internet, Google rutabaga, and you'll find 1,000 recipes.
Right.
You may still not like it.
And it's amazing, right? So back in the day when you made the transition,
Yep.
which was maybe 5 years ago.
I wish.
No, but back in the day, we didn't have the resources.
No.
Right? We had to go to a library,
Yep.
look things up.
Yep.
Now it's instantaneous.
Yep.
And
It's so much easier.
It's so much easier.
Yeah.
You've got videos that demonstrate.
There's even support groups
Yeah.
that you can go online with forums and find people with your condition who are going through what you're going through, emotionally, spiritually, even nutritionally, and get help.
Exactly. So prior to this transition, is it a fair assumption that you were a meat eater?
I have not eaten meat since I was 14.
Okay.
So I grew up in a household, Italian and Irish. My Irish father was a butcher. I hated meat. He always said that I had no DNA for eating meat because every piece of meat that he brought home, which I guess was a great cut of meat, I would cut into a million pieces to get all the fat out and put ketchup on it, no matter what it was.
Right.
And he would probably die because it was something wonderful. And I'd watch my brother at Thanksgiving eat a turkey leg and think like, oh my God, that's somebody's leg. And I wasn't prompted
wasn't
by
your thing,
anybody.
right.
So at 14, my dad had the opportunity to work at a slaughterhouse and make what was considered a lot of money. And my father was 6'2", Irish muscle, and like a golden retriever. He was always happy to see his kids. He left that morning, came back an hour later, walked past us like we didn't exist, sat at the kitchen table, and I watched his huge shoulders just sag and say to my mother, I couldn't do it. I'm sorry, I know we need the money. I couldn't kill those animals. And that was it. That was the nail in the coffin. I was done with meat.
Wow.
I was a junk food vegetarian. Oreos are vegan. So is Dr. Pepper.
Yep.
Right? So it took me cancer to go, oh, there's probably a better way to do it.
Exactly. And so for our viewers, I think the big challenge a lot of times is I don't know what to eat. If I take my beef or chicken or fish away, what do I substitute with?
Right.
How do I make that transition because I need the protein?
Right.
Right? How do I make that transition? What do I do? How do I cleanly substitute, right? So we featured chickpeas.
Chickpeas, there's tofu, tempeh, lentils, all kinds of beans. And the thing that has to switch more than the food is their perception of what a plate should look like.
Right.
Right? In America especially, we think of the big piece of protein in the middle with a couple of side dishes. I remember when I was a private chef, one family said to me, so basically our plate is all side dishes. And I thought, okay, if you want to look at it that way,
Sure.
But it's balanced side dishes. There's
Exactly.
carbohydrates, protein, fiber, and vegetables. So it is sort of like you've created a buffet plate of all different vegetables and grains and beans that then nourish you in the same way, if not better, as the protein you're getting from your animal source.
Exactly.
It is a shift in thinking. And for me, if you're not willing to shift your thinking, and it's very difficult for heart patients, and I'm not sure why, very difficult for them to change their thinking, give up hot, spicy food for a while, cut back on fat and salt. Heart patients like a lot of stimulation, whether it's sugar or hot spice or oil. And so to take that down to almost, I don't want to say bland, but simple is challenging.
It's very challenging.
So if they're not in crisis, it's small incremental steps.
Yeah.
Use half the spice you used, use half the salt you use half the oil.
And it's interesting, exactly. And you can fool your taste buds into things.
You can, absolutely.
Right? So, for example, garlic. If you add more garlic, it gives you that little salty, nutty kind of
And spicy
taste.
Tiny bit of heat.
Exactly.
Yep, saffron will do the same thing, a little heat.
Exactly.
Right.
And then if you finish off a product and then at the end just squeeze a little bit of lime or lemon on it,
Lifts it right up.
It lifts it up another level. Not only does it get your mouth watering, but it also imparts a sweetness later.
That's right. And in terms of cooking, transitioning, as we said, we have the internet.
Yeah.
Go on, watch cooking videos. First of all, you'll find out how easy it is.
Posting a lot.
I do post a lot.
Come on, tell our viewers where they can go
Well,
watch
it's
some of your videos.
everything is ChristinaCooks.com. Or Christina Cooks is Instagram and Christina Cooks is Twitter and But people really can watch videos and go, oh, that's how you cut a rutabaga. That's how you chop an onion.
Yeah.
It's so easy now. I mean, I grew up cooking because my family's Italian, and that was the only kitchen. The kitchen was the only room in the house where people weren't yelling.
Right.
They were singing, having a good time, and I thought, yeah, this is where I want to be. And so it's sort of in my DNA to cook. And so when I get with people now who are very unfamiliar with the kitchen, it takes a lot of nurturing to say, don't be afraid of this room. This is the room where you build your life.
Yeah.
This is where you build the you that moves through the world.
But look at construction, house construction. What have we moved to, right?
Kitchens are smaller and smaller.
Or they've gotten
And now they're becoming bigger.
Bigger,
Right.
exactly. Now we've got countertops and islands because
You still want to gather there.
everyone wants to gather around
Everyone
the
wants
kitchen.
to be near the food.
Whether it's your nuclear family, husband, wife, kids,
party.
or husband, and kids, whatever it
Where's
is.
everybody
or,
in a party? They're in the
exactly,
kitchen.
Everyone's in the kitchen.
Leaning against the kitchen counter with a glass of wine.
Exactly.
It's always going to be the
and
heart
you just
of the
layer
home.
the food there, and everyone just walks around, grabs
And it's
what
funny,
they
I
want.
did a charity event at a huge mansion. And when I tell you huge, their kitchen, when I was doing a demo for a charity organization, their kitchen comfortably stood 75 people in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
Standing in the kitchen,
Wow.
not spilling over, but the kitchen had like a fireplace area where you sat. And
Precisely.
I opened the cabinet. I said to the owner, what, and he was very cold. And I thought it was me, but then I realized he was cold to everybody, so was his spouse. And I said to him, is there anything you don't want me to use? And he goes, nope, it's all yours. There were still tags on the china. The pans still had their wrapping. And I said, did you just have the kitchen redone? 10 years ago, he said. We do nothing in here but heat leftovers or
Oh
a
my
takeout.
God.
And I thought, cold. Wow. The kitchen's cold. The fire's out.
It's the heart and soul
It's the
of...
heart of the home.
Yep.
Always.
Exactly.
And every culture that's, as we like to denigrate and say, attached to their food, like Italians,
Yeah.
when they're having breakfast, they're talking about lunch and the meal they're going to have or the meal they had. But that feeds us on so many more levels. At the table, we learn social justice, we learn communication, we learn sharing, we learn fairness.
It's where the connections happen.
Everything.
Right. And there's something about, that old saying or old adage, a way to a man's heart is through the
It's
food.
through his stomach.
Through his stomach.
Yeah.
But it applies not only to men, it applies to men, women, kids,
Everybody.
everyone. And
Everyone wants to be fed.
Exactly. And it's a little disarming and it just calms things down,
Yep.
allowing those connections to occur.
Yep. If you're really nervous and you're having someone over for dinner, everybody instantly calms once you're at the table and the food's on the table. They don't even care if the food's good.
Exactly.
You've somebody cooked for them, you're all together. It's about the joy of eating. And so with heart, when you can bring joy back into food because they start to feel better, healthier, stronger, then it becomes easier. Their heart opens. And so many things about their life change.
So, people are afraid of cooking. It's a complex process. What tips would you give them to break it down? How do we make it simple so they're less afraid of cooking? One of the things that we just spoke about were have 4, 5, 6 different items on your plate. And then somebody will say, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Where do I find the time?
Yeah.
Simple strategies.
At first, you make 2 dishes.
Yeah.
Right? The first thing you do when you go in the kitchen is breathe.
Yeah.
It's dinner. It's not world peace, although it could be. It's not world peace. It's not rocket science. You're making dinner. It's broccoli. Settle down.
Yeah.
Right? And so you find a simple recipe that you like. I always tell people to take 4 recipes and master them. And I don't care if you're making the same 4 recipes for the first 2 weeks of your cooking, because after those 2 weeks, you're going to know how to handle your knife. It's like anything. 14 to 21 times, you're now a habit.
Yeah.
Right? So you master those 4 dishes, and then you go, okay, now I have confidence. I can make that dish, and somebody besides me actually likes it.
There you go.
And then you start to build your repertoire.
Right.
And it's very easy. We've put so much pressure on cooking because of, sadly, people like me. Chefs are rock stars. We watch them on TV. Michael Pollan famously said, we spend more time watching chefs than we do making dinner.
Right.
So chefs have elevated cooking to a place where people think, oh, no. I could never do that. I can't do it like Gordon Ramsay or Robert Irvine or...
It doesn't have to be.
Exactly.
It's what you make, what you
Go back
do,
to Julia
what
Child,
what you
who
like.
said, this is a life skill.
Right.
It's not an art form. It's not a craft.
Yeah.
And if you watched Julia's old shows, which I used to run home from high school to watch, at the end of that half hour, you could make that dish. You could go into your kitchen and make that dish, no matter whether it was a souffle, a stuffed turkey, whatever it was, after you've laughed your butt off watching her. You could go home and make that. You could go into your kitchen and make that dish. So she was very instructional and took all of the hype off cooking and the pressure. Now, I think our people feel like they have to be Martha Stewart and Julia Child wrapped into one and be perfect. And you don't.
And they have to perfectly dice the carrots or the tomatoes or the onions. And
I don't care if you break the carrot in half and throw it in the pan. I don't care. Till you get but developing your knife skills is not only essential, it's calming.
Right.
And it's fun. You know, once you get, and you're really good at chopping, you go, okay.
There you go.
There you go. I think I'll invite friends over while I'm still chopping. You know what I mean? So they have to, and heart is joy.
Yeah.
So once you find the joy in cooking again, because you get good at, even if it's one dish, suddenly everything opens. It's a whole new world. And you're happy and you're calm and you don't allow nonsense in the kitchen. Like to this day in my family, there's no arguing in the kitchen. There's no politics in the kitchen. There's no TV in the kitchen.
Rules. Yeah.
The kitchen is, I don't even play music unless I'm baking. I sort of like music when I bake. But it's very calm. My kitchen's very zen when we're cooking. And so it's kind of like you look for that space in your life because we live in chaos. And suddenly there's this bubble of just beautiful calm. And out of that comes food that nourishes you on every level.
So more on the fun side.
Yeah.
Do you follow recipes or you sort of
not
like
anymore.
Me? Like a little bit of
not
this,
anymore.
a little bit of that?
Actually, I never did.
Yeah.
I come from a family that didn't measure. When my mother passed away, I was cleaning out her kitchen and I found her measuring cups that she had gotten as a wedding gift still in their package, never used. And then I found my grandmother's recipes that said things like, take the blue lid from the drawer and measure 4 scoops of flour. And I'm like, what? And the red spoon for the baking powder. And you're thinking, okay. And they were all great bakers and cooks. Yeah. And then when I went to culinary school and started to study pastry, the first French chef who was my instructor, I thought, okay, he's going to show these dumb Italians how to measure and sift and whisk. He did none of it. He said baking is passion.
Yeah.
If you're not passionate about it, you can become good, but you won't be great unless you love it. And I thought, great. So there you go. And so he was driven by the passion of it. So I think what happens is you may not be passionate about cooking and you have this condition you want to deal with or prevent, or you're pre-diabetic or pre-heart disease. And your doctor has said, listen, man, you got to get it together. So what happens is at first it's a chore. I got to do this. Then you start to feel better. You wake up and go, oh, my knees don't ache.
Yeah.
I can breathe a little better. Suddenly you go, maybe I'm liking this. And then there's that pride thing of saying, oh, your doctor was right. And then you get past that and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So it is baby steps. Yeah. But when people feel better, they become inspired to do more. And support would be great. Yeah. But they may not have it. They may either be alone or their family doesn't want to do it. But even if the family watches them start feeling better, looking better, losing weight, whatever it is, they go, oh, maybe he's not nuts. Maybe I should eat that Brussels sprout when he cooks it. And suddenly a whole community gathers around you because, again, it's heart. Yeah. Everything we do comes from the heart.
Sure. So I've got to say, your story is incredibly inspiring.
Thank you.
Took a tough situation, completely turned it around.
Yeah.
You became empowered to become even a better version of yourself.
Absolutely.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you've coached people throughout your life into a different way of cooking, a different way of life. You've traveled the world teaching people.
Yes.
Right?
Which is the best part of my job.
So what does Christina do next? Where do you go from here?
I don't think there's anywhere else to go for me because this is the passion. This is the mission. You know, when I was 26 and diagnosed with cancer, I was a good person. I carried a canvas bag to the store. I recycled. I did, all those things you're supposed to do to be a good steward of the planet. Yeah. But I couldn't tell you if we sat and had a serious conversation of what I was doing here. Sure. Why am I here? Am I here to be a pastry chef, an illustrator? I don't know, whatever. Sounds good. After cancer, I didn't, and I think this is true with anybody, I hope, that's had an illness, you don't squander that second chance.
No.
What am I doing here? And I thought, people don't know about this. If we knew about food, wouldn't we do it? And of course, you know, there's the whole segment of the population back then that were like, well, if this was so good, wouldn't the doctors tell us to do this? But doctors didn't know much about nutrition then, and now it's just an evolving, you know, concept to them. But,
Sure.
but I think that there's a whole world of people who need to understand the impact of food on their wellness. So probably until I fall over, on some level, this is what I'll be doing.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having
This has
me.
been incredibly inspiring,
Thanks.
insightful. It's given me a lot to think about. And I hope for our viewers, I hope this has meant something to you, because every single one of us in today's day and age has something that's challenging.
Absolutely.
And it's not necessarily the stress, but it's how you deal with the stress and what you do with it.
That's
So
right.
once again, thank you so
Thank
much for coming
you.
on today. It's
Thank you.
really appreciated. And I wish you nothing but the best and a lot of success in following your heart and your mission.
Thank you. And you too. We'll cook together.
Sounds good. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Look for more of our informative streaming episodes here on this channel. See you soon.